Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Amanda Shee. I'm an anesthesiologist and intensivist, and today we're going to be talking about letters of intent, also known as love letters, rank lists, and the match. It's getting to be the time in the interview season where fourth year medical students are in the midst of wrapping up interviews or have finished up their interview season. At this point, I have frequently gotten questions about whether or not a love letter or letter of intent, essentially some sort of communication to a program, can be beneficial in order to actually match at that program. From personal experience, what I will tell you is that I myself wrote a letter of intent, and to define letter of intent, I would say that it's essentially an email that goes to the program director that says that I'm going to rank that program as my first choice program, and that I feel like it's a good fit for both myself and that I'm a good fit for the program, and that is my way of saying I love you, please rank me to match because I want to be at your program. In my blog entry, I go over more details about what my letter entailed, and I also put my actual letter of intent in the blog entry, so make sure to check that out. But in this video, I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the things that come to mind when I advise on letters of intent and love letters. So first and foremost, did my letter of intent make a difference? Was that the reason why I matched at Mass General and at my top choice program? The answer, probably no. Many big programs, after having now been on the recruitment committee or the group that evaluates applications, both for my internship and for a short time while I was an anesthesia resident at my program, I've been able to kind of get a glimpse into what we look at, how we decide on rank lists, etc., etc. And what I will say is that most of the time, by the time these letters come through, they're not really going to influence where you stand, at least at a big program. So my program is a big program. We get a lot of applications. We're relatively competitive. And so as a result, it probably didn't matter that I told them that they were my number one, because the program itself was going to make the decision about how it wanted to rank me regardless. Now, if I were in a different situation and I had ranked a smaller program as my number one or top choice, or a program that is historically in an area that maybe is not as desirable, I'm from the Midwest, so I love Michigan and I would have loved to be in the state of Michigan. But what I will say is that having now moved to the coast, I interacted with a lot of people who have never been to the Midwest and have no interest at all into moving to the Midwest. So as a result, sometimes programs that are in the Midwest or certain states that are not as desirable may want more indication from the applicant that the applicant is interested in them. And that may actually influence the applicant's ranking on the list. Those are situations in which I think communication can influence where you end up landing on someone's rank list. There's other host of factors that also come into play when it comes to whether a letter or communication will help you or get you higher on a program's rank list. Other things like if a program has been demonstrating any kind of recent changes or big changes in leadership, or it has gotten any negative press, either on social media or in any kind of other articles that go out, those are things that can actually influence or scare applicants away from programs like that. And so as a result, that can influence, where a program lands in other people's rank lists and may then help you if that's still your top choice program. One vital, important thing to emphasize is that you should not send more than one letter of intent. Absolutely do not do that. Because a letter of intent telling a program that they are your top choice and then lying about it, if that program were to rank you in a slot that typically would match, would sour or burn a lot of bridges for you. And what I will tell you is that in anesthesiology, our specialty is actually a really small world. It's a really small world. There are a lot of anesthesiologists in the country, but the network is tight, and oftentimes we're separated by less than a few degrees of separation. That being said, even bigger specialties, even internal medicine, the network is relatively tight. People get to know each other. And as a result, if you burn a bridge now, early in your career, before you even really have gotten started in your career in that specialty, you may find that that may come back to haunt you later on. So for example, this is actually not a time where I felt like a bridge was being burned, but I had interviewed across the country, and I remember distinctly interviewing with a program director that a few years later, when I was on my ACGME committee as the resident representative, I then evaluated that program director for a slot on the committee I was on. And that program director made a very positive impression on me. So as a result, I took that information and used it when assessing this particular applicant in order to join our committee. So even though it seems like, oh, why would I ever influence a program director's potential future opportunities or leadership or organizational opportunities, in fact, you'd be surprised in what capacity you may encounter other program directors or other faculty members that you have worked with in the past. So to reiterate, please, please, please do not ever send more than one email that says that you are ranking a program as your number one, because there can only be one program that's at the top of your list. Another aside or anecdote is that I know that a longtime program director that I work with on various committees has said this many, many times before. When they have received letters from students that say that that student has ranked their program as the first choice, and then the program director goes ahead and ranks that student in a slot that would be typically ranked to match, and the student doesn't match there, that particular individual remembers every single one of those students. They remember their name, they remember that interaction, and as a result, that has burned a bridge for that individual. And you, like I said about the whole me evaluating a program director for a committee, you really never know when you're going to encounter someone again for a professional or personal opportunity. So don't do that. Now, another question that has been asked is, maybe does it make sense to send an email communication to your top few programs and say, you're very highly ranked. I like you a lot, but not to the point that I'm going to make you my number one. I feel kind of plus minus about this. I think that in certain situations, such as smaller programs that have maybe a smaller number of students to rank, that want to be ensure they can kind of formulate their class in a certain way, that could potentially influence where you land on their rank list. But the majority of the time, I really don't think that a letter like that makes a really big difference. Another thing that I like to mention is that sometimes a good way to communicate with a program is if you have some sort of new update that you wanted to share that may impact your application. So for example, sometimes students come to interviews, we review everything and we say, okay, the student is well-rounded, except maybe this one component is a little weaker than anything else. So let's say a student had a step 1 score that was a little weaker, they interviewed still, but their step 2 score was 2 standard deviations above average. Now that student would benefit from sending that update out to all the programs to show that, hey, I can take tests, I can pass my boards. And that's really the big question that we're trying to answer is, can this student, when they join us as a resident, pass their boards? And that's why, while the step exams do not at all predict your clinical ability, they do help us understand whether you can take a multiple choice exam. That's the reality of that. So things that, for example, if you don't have a lot of publications or scientific scholarly activity, those are updates. Say you get a new first author publication in a major journal, that's an update that programs may take into account and say, hey, this person really worked on this area of potential weakness that they had. Maybe we should consider bumping them up a little on our list. So I think those things matter. Another post-interview communication that may also matter is a personal call or connection. So what is valued most in most specialties is a colleague that you trust, that you've worked with. So for example, someone who has graduated, an alumni of a residency program that you as a student have worked very closely with, and that believes that you're a strong candidate. That's someone that could reach out to that residency program and personally either call the program director or send an email note to that program director saying or advocating for you as a student to match at that program, because either they've seen you clinically and they know that that particular program is the top choice for the student. A couple of notes on rank lists. So the letters of intent and love letters are intimately related to you creating your rank list and wanting to match at a particular program or in a particular geographic location. I still remember having to put together my rank list and how hard it was at that point in my life to decide, hey, is this the time to leave Michigan? For some background, grew up in the state of Michigan. I left for 2 years to go to a liberal arts college in Western Massachusetts. And then I came back to Michigan because my little brother was growing up. I wanted to be around for my family, and I wanted to be able to be close by to my support network and system. So I did medical school in Michigan as well. And residency was the first point, really, I felt like in my life that I wanted to consider leaving something comfortable, leaving my home state, exploring and being able to kind of open more doors. And so when I created my rank list, I will say that I already knew that I wanted to be at MGH as my first choice program after my interview. When I got the interview, I was a little concerned that it wouldn't necessarily be a good fit for me or that I wouldn't want to live in Boston. But I found after interviewing, getting to know the program, getting to know alumni and current residents, that it had been a good fit. And now reflecting back, it definitely was a good fit. Something that I also considered too is that I matched into an advanced program. So I did an internship separately from my residency. And I did internship in Detroit in order to stay in Michigan and be able to stay close to home for 1 extra year, save a ton of money before moving to a big city, because I was able to live in a very affordable area in the state of Michigan. So that was a personal decision on my part to stay close to home. But another thing that I considered when I was going through my list was, at that time, I had a significant other who I'm not currently with right now. And it was hard for me to try to figure out how to mix that person into the equation of what programs I was going to rank and in what order. I will say, I came from a brand new medical school. I was the first class. And so I didn't really have that guidance in terms of being able to say, maybe you shouldn't rank a program you don't want to be at. I got the guidance that I should rank every program I interviewed at. And I interviewed at a lot of programs, 17 of them of anesthesia programs to be exact. And I did rank all 17, but I will tell you the ones that I ranked lower on my list, I would not have been happy at. And so as a result, I like to at least put it out there that, number one, consider that life is in flux and that you don't really know who you're gonna be almost in a year, in 4 years, in 5 years, and in a decade. It's hard to know what values what values are going to change for you, what priorities are going to change. You never know if everything is going to be, you never know, like, that we were going to have a pandemic, like a global pandemic, and everything was going to go totally awry. So at the moment that you have when you're making your rank list, just recognize and assess your own priorities at that point. Do you want to move out of a certain geographic area? Do you want to definitely be in a certain geographic area? Does the geographic area matter more than the opportunities at the program? Did you actually like the people you interacted with at the program? Did it feel like a community that you could be supported at? I mean, these are all questions you really have to ask yourself and decide, because the reality is you just don't know what's going to happen later on in your life as well. And so using the information you have right now is important, and prioritizing what you think is important is going to guide what you decide to do with your rank list. So I personally knew that I cared about my career, number one, at that time. And so I ranked in the order of the programs I felt that I would be most successful or would give me the most career opportunities and doors to open that I could. Let's talk about match day. It's crazy to me that looking back, that we go through this whole process where we submit a whole list of places where we would want to go in the order we would want, and then programs do the same thing, and then a computer algorithm goes ahead and takes your list and says, okay, you want to go here, and this program says, oh, you're there, and then it just keeps slotting it and then moves down, and then eventually everyone gets a slot except the couple people who don't. What I want to talk about is match day and everything I was feeling during that, because this is a crazy time in your life. Fourth year is such a weird time in a medical student's life. But I remember I submitted my list. I remember, kind of just trying to cruise through fourth year. And then when March came around, I was on my anesthesia rotation during match week. And on the Monday of match week, I knew that the email was coming out, so I asked my resident if I could step out of the operating room in order to open my email and figure out if I had matched at all. And I had done that. I stepped out of the OR. I remember refreshing my email a bunch of times, getting the "you have matched" email, and, well, I take that back. Getting the very ominous subject line email, and then having to open it to figure out if I had matched. Found out I had matched, felt an immediate sigh of relief, which was then replaced by feeling like, oh my God, now I have to wait an entire week before knowing where I'm going to be in this country. Now, my rank list literally had programs, had Michigan programs, but then it had programs on the East Coast, on the West Coast, like in the middle of nowhere, the Midwest, in various big cities, littler cities. I could have ended up in a lot of different places because I interviewed at so many places. And so I spent the rest of the week having like nightmares about matching at certain places and realizing I would have to move to those places where I actually didn't want to be at, and start over fresh. And those were really frightening. That being said, Thursday of match week comes around, and I get a call from the dean of students at my school. The med schools on the day before match day, so Thursday of match week, they actually find out where all the students have matched. And then on Friday, we find out where we've matched. And so Thursday, I get a call from the dean, and I had totally forgotten about this, but they had sent out a survey about whether or not we felt comfortable releasing to the public where we had matched. And I said no, because I felt like this was a private thing, that it's not something I really wanted to go sharing with the world immediately. And so she called me and she's like, How you feeling? What's going on? By the way, are you sure you don't want to share your result? And at that point, a lot of different things were going through my head. One, I was like, well, is it because I matched really well? And that's why she wants me to share my result? Or is it because, hey, this is a new medical school. We really need to share results of everyone so that it looks like we've done a good job with our match list. I had no idea. But basically, for almost 24 hours, I was thinking, hey, is it possible? Could I have matched at my first choice? I want you guys all to know that I truly did not believe it would be possible for me to match at my first choice. Prior to matching, I truly was like, I can't even entertain this idea. I can't even start looking at Boston apartments because it's not going to happen. That's pretty much what I was thinking. It's not going to happen. So when this crazy idea in my mind that maybe I had done well on the match and that I had matched at my top choice came into my mind, I was like, oh, I don't know. So on Friday of match week, we all gathered in a hotel ballroom. We, took photos, did all the usual stuff, and they passed out the letters, and I opened the letter with my family. And what was really funny was that everyone saw the Henry Ford part because I also matched in a transitional year program because I wanted to do advanced. And so my family was like, oh, you're going to Henry Ford? And I was like, no, I'm going to my top choice program. Fourth year's a crazy time, but it's memorable. It's a moment of intense, it's just crazy. And even my colleagues who didn't necessarily match in their first or second choice, the big deal is that we were all going to be doctors. All of us are going to be doctors. We were starting our careers off. And while some of my colleagues maybe didn't start off their careers exactly how they envisioned it, or they weren't sure how things were going to go, at the end of the day, we have gotten through this. Many of us went through the programs. Many of us have succeeded in wherever we decided to go. And it's an incredible experience. I hope this video and my blog entry were helpful to you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.